4, welcome to your reading for today. So, today we are going to finish The Hodgehog. We're going to read the final chapter and answer a few questions, and then unfortunately it's all over. I hope you've enjoyed reading it. I know I have. So, could you please read chapter 9, the final chapter in your book, and then come back and we'll go through the questions. Okay, so how do you think the lollipop lady felt when she saw Max and his family waiting to cross the road? And how does the author show this? I would like you to describe how the author ends the story and then tell me your opinion. Do you like the way he's ended it? What do you think the most important message of the story is? Were your predictions correct that you made about the story? Make sure you justify your answer. So, for example, if your predictions were correct, what part of them were correct? If they weren't, were they close? Why weren't they correct? And which part of the story did you enjoy the most? Did you find the most interesting or exciting? Or it might be that you enjoyed the most. And I'd like you to explain why. Okay, when you're ready, unpause me and we'll go through the answers. Okay, so the lollipop lady was astounded. She was shocked to see a group of hedgehogs lining up to cross the road. And the author says that she never forgot the sight and that the people who witnessed the event were astonished. Okay, the story ends in the future where another mother hedgehog is telling the legendary story of Max and how he crossed the road safely with his family. And I personally like this because it shows that Max had become a hero to other hedgehogs, but that part's your opinion. And the most important message of the story is to never give up. You should always keep working hard to get what you want and you will get there eventually. And then the final two were very much your own opinion, your own predictions. If you'd like to share them with me, I'd love to hear them. Just send me an email and we can have a little discussion of them together. Okay, welcome to your maths for today, guys. Same as it's been for the rest of the week. Please don't pause in when he tells you to. Just do the video and then your questions are at the end. So today we're going to recap calculating the area of shapes using counting squares.
Hello. Hello, welcome to today's lesson. We spent a couple of lessons looking at perimeter now. We're now going to look at another property of 2D shapes, which is area. Just like with perimeter, it's really important we understand what area means. What's the area of, say, this shape? The area is the space inside a flat 2D shape. So the perimeter is the length around the edge. The area is how much space it takes up, the space inside a 2D shape. Can you visualize, can you imagine the area of those three shapes? That's the area of the triangle. What about the second shape, that irregular pentagon? That's the area of that pentagon. Now the third shape, area, is about the space inside of 2D shape, but it's inside a closed 2D shape. Now that shape isn't closed because you can see there's a little bit of like one of its sides missing, so that we can't really see the area there because it's not a closed shape. So we can decide on the area of a shape using smaller shapes inside it. So if we were going to think about the area of this rectangle, which would it be better to fill it with? Would it be better to fill it with the circles in nice neat rows or those squares in nice neat rows, and why? Pause the video, have a think about which of the smaller shapes you'd prefer to use. If we were going to use the circle, and I'll start showing this here, what would be the problem? Well, we could fill the rectangle and we could say, oh, it's 20 circles to fill the rectangle, so the area is 20. But there'd be lots of gaps, wouldn't there? And we wouldn't be counting those gaps when we said 20 circles, so we can't really use the circles there because we'd be having lots of the area missing. It makes more sense to use the squares because when we use the squares, we can see the whole of the shape is filled. So how do we use those squares? Well, we'll fill the shape in, and to find the area, we simply count up how many are inside the rectangle. How many of those small squares does the rectangle take up? It takes up 20 squares. How about this shape? again, we'd be counting the squares. And we've got 7 squares there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Pause the video, have a go at calculating the area of those shapes. Number 1, we've got 9 squares. Number 2, we've got 4 squares. And number 3, we've got 4 squares. And numbers 2 and 3 are really important because those two shapes have the same area, but they look quite different to each other. Shapes can have the same area and be just the same as each other, or they could look really, really different to each other, and that's really important to know. We could develop this and think about this shape. We've got squares, but we've got different colours of squares. So the blue area is 3 squares, because I can see 3 blue squares. What about the red area? 4 red squares. The white area is 3. How would we find the total? We could count up all the squares, or we could add up, of course. 3, add 4, add 3, which is 10 squares. Have a go at filling in the sentences for that shape. We've got the orange area is 4, blue is 2 at the top and the bottom, the grey is 3 down the middle, the white is 2, and the total area is 11. 11 squares for this shape. Do the same here. We've got 2 green squares, 4 yellow squares, 2 grey, 4 white. Add them up together. This time we've got 12 squares there. This is the same shape. I've got rid of the colours, but it's the same shape as we've just seen, and we just worked out, didn't we, that this is 12 squares, and we could count them up. Can we see anything else that helps us to find that it's 12 squares in area? We've got 4 squares across the top and across the bottom, of course, because it's a rectangle. We've got 3 squares on the left and the right. And 4 times 3, 3 times 4 is 12. So that's one way of finding the area of a rectangle. Doesn't work for every shape, but the area of a rectangle if we didn't have the squares, but if we were given the measurements for the sides. Have a go. You could do the counting, or you can have a go at the multiplication to find the area of those 3 shapes. So number 1, I can see we've got 5 times 2, which is 10. So that's 10 squares in area. Number 2 is going to be 1. We've only got 1 across the top, times 6, which is 6 in area. And number 3, well, that's going to be 4 times 4, isn't it? I can see we've got 4 across the top, 4 down the side. So it's actually, that shape is a square. 4 times 4, 16 is the area for that shape. How about this shape? We can't really use the multiplication here because we've got our 3 squares and a triangle. Well, we've not really talked about triangles. And the area, of course, is how much is coloured, so blue and red. We're not worried about the white here. Well, I can see I've got 3 squares, but the triangle is exactly half a square, isn't it? So the area is 3½ squares. Have a go at calculating the area of those 3 shapes. So number 1, I can see I've got 2 full squares and a half, 2½ squares. Number 2, I've got 2 full squares, and then I've got 2 halves, haven't I? And you can imagine moving one of those halves to the other half would in fact make 3 squares. And how about number 3? Well, it's quite similar, isn't it? I've got 2 full squares, and then I've got 2 halves. A half out of half is 1. So again, number 3, I've got 3 squares. Again, look at number 2 and 3. The same area, but very different shapes. You're now ready to have a go at the questions on the white.
So your questions are there for you. Any problems, just send me an email. Have a go. Pause me while you do, and then unpause me, and we'll go through the answers together. Okay, hoping you've all had a go at those. The answers are now on the screen. Any problems, if you're looking and you're thinking, oh, I've not got this, please feel free to email me and we'll work it out together. Okay, welcome to your writing for today. So yesterday you planned your hedgehog survival guide, and today you are going to write it. So you are writing your survival guide. So it's how to survive as a hedgehog from personal experience. That's your title. So you need to introduce it, so explain what it is for and why it's useful. And remember, you are Max, so you're writing in first person as Max. So well, you could say, when I did this, this is what happened, so don't do this, or do this, this works, okay? You are Max, you are that hedgehog. You've got to then pop some top advice and rules to follow from Max's experience, okay? And then summarise it. So everything you put in your plan yesterday, you are popping it all together to create a survival guide, okay? I'm so excited to read these, guys. Make sure you email them over so that I get to enjoy them too, please. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.